There we go. Okay. So it's my pleasure today to introduce my friend, colleague, and at one time he was a TA for me at the University of Wisconsin and for David Larbalestier. And he is currently a professor at the Department of Engineering, Science, and Materials at the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez. He did his bachelor's degree in aeronautical and mechanical engineering at the National University of Cordoba in Argentina. Then he came to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where he did his master's and PhD degree in metallurgical engineering. And he was one of the few students that was in metallurgical engineering. Most were in materials science and engineering. But his real love is for the broader area of materials science. And he joined the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez in 2000 and has been active there in developing materials science research programs, large centers such as the NSF PRIM and an NSF CREST. And he has had many graduate students and a very large number of undergraduate students that have gone through his lab under his tutelage. So Marcelo, it's over to you. And I am going to mute. And if everyone else would mute. Thanks. Can people stop you for questions during the presentation?
I'd rather complete the presentation because it's kind of long.
Okay.
I'll try to shorten it. I'm gonna skip some slides.
Okay.
So it would be convenient to have a discussion by the end.
Okay.
And I forgot one important thing, to number the slides. That's a rookie mistake.
Whoops. Okay.
Well, next time. All right. Thank you, Eric. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to talk to you, even through these online things, remote access and so forth, mandated by this horrible pandemic. I wish I was in Tallahassee in person. Probably in the next years, I'll be able to join you there. Today, the main purpose of the presentation is to demonstrate, if that's needed, that material science is as broad as you can think of, that the sky is the limit in terms of material science. As you heard, my training was first in aeronautical engineering and then in metallurgical engineering. I started working with nucleation of aluminum alloys, and then I moved to a more applied research, working on fabrication of cast iron parts, and particularly focusing on solidification of cast iron. I mention this because nowadays my areas of research have changed drastically, as you'll see. And I want to dedicate these few minutes to talk about composites that we've been developing at the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez. Composite materials are naturally, they are everywhere. And the reason for that is that they have the best of two worlds, or maybe three worlds, where you're joining different types of materials, from ceramics and polymers to metallic and ceramic materials and so forth. Examples of applications of that everywhere, from just a surfing board to brake pads to the blades of a wind turbine or the windshields of a Lamborghini, and even concrete. Just such a prosaic material is a composite material because it's made of a matrix made of cement and reinforced with other ceramic materials like just gravel and sand. And well, I'll talk about this concrete in a minute. Remember, my background is in aeronautical engineering and then metallurgical engineering. And despite that, I am working in concrete nowadays. Nature also provides examples of composite materials like this very interesting composite. That's the shell of a mollusk. And the shell inherits the high hardness to these calcite plates that are glued together by chitosan. That's a biopolymer. I mention this because some of our work has been related to this type of materials. So again, my training was in metallurgical engineering. So I'm going to start talking about concrete. I'll go to well, what I like the most, which is aluminum-based materials. I don't know if I'll have time to talk about these composites that we worked on that have a biopolymeric matrix. I'll see if I have time to talk a little bit about these other nanocomposites. And these are not composites, but these are very interesting materials. New aluminum cerium-based alloys. We worked on that in the last 3-4 years. And new and upcoming projects, I'm gonna talk about this because this is really exciting. This is something that we started working 2 years ago. So, concrete. Let me just tell you a short anecdote about maybe 8 years ago. My work was fully devoted to aluminum matrix composites. A Colombian grad student came to my office and he knew someone told him that I was working with materials research. And he asked me for a project. And I said, well, besides, he was asking for funding, right? Not only a project, but for funding too. And I asked him, sorry, I don't have any funding at this moment for you. And in terms of projects, all my work is dedicated to metal matrix composites. But by chance, I was reading something about concrete and how nanotechnology has been used to modify concrete. And then an idea came to my mind. I called the student again and I told him, look, I don't have funding for you, but I can have funding for materials and access to instrumentation. And I told him, there's something very interesting occurring these days. And with nanotechnology at that time, right now too, I was the director of the Nanotechnology Center of the university that is funded by NSF. And I told him, well, look, what if we add some nanosilica emulsion into a concrete mixture and start working on that? This guy was really happy to have something to work on, and he was a really outstanding student. So with that, that was enough. The guy started working on that, and then we started discovering a bunch of issues that came up when we added nanosilica to concrete mixture, interactions with the aggregates, and particularly with silica fume, problems with workability. The fluid mixture started getting harder too soon, and that had to be controlled. And on top of that, besides the interactions among the processing factors and the components of concrete, there were problems with nonlinearity, and that complicated things even more. So to make the story short, that student published 4 papers on this. We published with him 4 papers. And one of those papers, he was so crazy that he put together an artificial neural network methodology to predict compressive strength and tensile strength of these modified concrete mixtures. He graduated, now he's professor back in Colombia, but we continue, because he opened that door, we continued working on that. And for instance, he told us that there were these competing factors in the performance of concrete. And particularly if you use a certain type of really inexpensive silica fume as additive or as a source of microsilica, there were problems that when you raise the amount of silica fume or raise the amount of sand or raise the amount of gravel and modify the water to binder ratio of the mixture, well, everything got tangled up because there were competing factors. So we started working with a professor in industrial engineering and another grad student, and he came up with this strategy called like that, competing factor analysis, so that we were able to optimize some concrete mixtures. As a result of that, we got 2 publications out of that work. That research didn't stop there, continued working on that, and then another issue came up. We got in contact with a local recycling company, and they were asking, guys, do you have any idea how we can have some added value to these waste plastics that we are collecting? That was interesting because they were collecting these waste plastics from the local biomedical company, so they could control the size, they could control a little bit about the composition of the plastics. So it was not just random plastic pieces. So we started thinking of adding this threaded plastics into concrete, and that opened even one more door, and we started working on that. Another student produced a paper on that, and nowadays a PhD student, she's not working under my supervision, but I gave her and her advisors, they are 2 professors from industrial engineering, the idea. So they developed the idea on their own, and they are starting to optimize the mixtures with one additional thing. Remember, we are using nanosilica. Nanosilica is expensive, so we have to bring buckets of nanosilica emulsions from the mainland over to Puerto Rico, right? Nanosilica is less expensive these days, but it is still expensive. We don't use much, but it's still expensive, particularly if you're working with high volumes of concrete, right? So this group, and these 2 professors and this doctoral student, what they are doing now is not only optimizing the concrete mixture in terms of its mechanical response, but also in terms of the price. One of my colleagues is an expert in that, so they are developing these optimization models where everything is being included. They already produced one very interesting paper, and they are developing another one. So one other thing that was a side project, we started adding bamboo fibers into concrete, and we found out that the curing time of that concrete was really fast. So we proposed this to the Department of Defense as to produce concrete for airstrips in tropical areas that have been affected by climate change, natural disasters like us. So you can just put together in very short time an airstrip where you can land heavy equipment, large airplanes, C-130 or whatever airplane you may want to use. We didn't continue the work because of we could not produce in high volumes these nice bamboo fibers. So that we were conditioned by that. It took a long time to one undergrad to produce adequate amount of fibers from the bamboo source that we have. But the work is there. He's awaiting for funding if we get that, and for a reliable source of bamboo fibers. As I said, my lab for materials started with metals, particularly with aluminum. And this was something like 6-7 years ago. I was reading something about the problems that there were in the production of certain MEMS and other devices where they require high reflectivity in a film. And then in another paper, they mentioned that they were using aluminum films for a number of reasons. I mean, the resistance of aluminum to oxidation, and the reflectivity of the material, of course. But they were complaining about the mechanical properties of those films. Aluminum was soft, aluminum had a low Young's modulus, and so forth. So I recall that I had a lot of work done in aluminum matrix composites, particularly aluminum reinforced with diboride particles. Could be MgB2, could be AlP2, or niobium diborides. So we were working with an aluminum matrix composite and reinforced with aluminum diboride particles. Not nanoparticles, particles, right? Maybe 10 micron size. So we wonder, what if we try to produce thin films with that? So we looked around and we saw, well, we own a magnet transparent unit that is housed in our class 100 clean room. And we had purchased a nano indenter something like 3 years before that. So we said, well, let's see, we can try that. So we started depositing aluminum as a reference, pure aluminum, on glass slides and silicon wafers. And then we use our composite, that aluminum matrix composite, or aluminum born composites, if you will, as target in our magnet transparent unit. And started comparing the results between both. For mechanical properties, we use the nanoscratch module that the nano indenter has with a Berkovich tip. The unit can detect lateral forces, and with that we can extract or calculate the wear strength of the material. And of course, it comes with an AFM, so we can visualize the track. So one of my doctoral students, he started working on that. Yeah. And we found out that the Young's modulus of the film deposited from the composite target was really high, maybe twice as high as the pure aluminum one. So the wear resistance was high too. And after all that analysis, we produced one paper a few years ago, actually last year. And we continued that work, and because that was not enough. I said that we were demanding high reflectivity, and that high reflectivity is related to the surface of the material, particularly the roughness. So we did this work using our AFMs that at that time they were working. And we found out that a problem with soft aluminum deposited on whatever substrate you want, either glass slides or silicon wafer, he had a high roughness. One of the reasons is the induced residual stresses caused by the deposition. And as a result of that, you ended up with this hillocks formation on the aluminum, and the pure aluminum film. But on the other side, when we tried our composite film, look at the scales, and this is 300 nanometers, this is just 20 nanometers. So it may look rougher, but it's not. It's actually roughness is really small. So no helic formation and low roughness. And that was, we published this research this year in 2021. That student graduated, and believe it or not, he graduated from our civil engineering program. And his work was really outstanding. Only 2 papers were really solid papers, both of them. Let me see, what time is it? I'm gonna skip this. I just briefly, I'm gonna comment on this. We were working with biopolymeric-based composites containing strontium titanate nanoparticles for flexible capacitors. This was an outstanding work by a master's student. She published 4 papers, 3 papers and a book chapter, and now she's working for the Navy in Philadelphia. I'm going to skip through this, it's too much, and because we were able to synthesize very efficiently these chitosan films, another student started working with the use of chitosan as a substrate for photocatalytic nanoparticles, anatase, that's one of the polymorphs of titanium dioxide, to control the growth of 2 types of bacteria, Staphylococcus and E. coli, gram-positive, gram-negative, and demonstrate that the composite can be efficiently used to control bacterial growth. The student involved got his master's, and now he's working for Procter & Gamble in Ohio. We produced a chapter of a book with those results. Prior to that, another student, now he's about to graduate with his PhD from the University of Florida, was working on these other composites where we were using recycled glass as a matrix or as a substrate to deposit TiO2 again, to control some emerging contaminants. In this particular case, it was atrazine. Atrazine is fertilizer, heavily used in agriculture, and it's a contaminant of body waters that has not been controlled yet. I mean, EPA doesn't have yet strong measures against the use of atrazine. Produced 2 papers out of that. Again, I'm not gonna detail that, no time for that. Through a collaboration with a professor in UCLA, we were working with these nanocomposites containing gamma alumina nanoparticles, and another grad student started working in producing wires made of these nanocomposites. Final idea was to see if we could have these wires as sort of a fillers for TIG welding of aluminum. That's why we were measuring conductivity of the wire, because if it has high resistivity, then with the arc of the TIG tip, we could increase the temperature of the filler, so it would melt really fast. With the same idea, I was reading at some point something about the Porte de Le Chatelier phenomenon. If you don't know what that is, that's sort of a instability when you're pulling an aluminum magnesium alloy, where you ended up having a serrated curve in the tensile versus strain curve. And that's a result of a plastic hardening, and then that's followed by a relaxation caused by the precipitation of these magnesium nanoprecipitates. So that if you're fabricating something, some piece made of aluminum magnesium alloys, you may end up having problems with that fabrication. So we thought about, we have these nanoparticles, we know how to fabricate them. What if we add the nanoparticles to that aluminum magnesium alloy and see if we could, I don't know, prevent or at least reduce the problem, the Porte de Le Chatelier problem. And in effect, this doctoral student was able to do that. We published 2 papers here with him. He graduated last year, got his doctoral degree in civil engineering, believe it or not. And then, since we were interested in fillers for aluminum TIG welding, another student, in this case was an industrial engineering master's student, started working on the optimization of the fillers. So he came up with a strategy to do that, and we compare the filler with what is being used nowadays when you want to weld 2 pieces of 6061 as base material. That's a commercial 5653. That's if you're familiar with aluminum designations, that's an aluminum copper based alloy. This work was presented in a conference of the Department of Defense, and we got this award, an innovation award in 2017. Just to put this into context, this student went to present this in Tampa just 1 month, no, less than that, 3 weeks after Hurricane Maria went over us. So that was really, really amazing. It was a high achievement for this grad student. We're in the process of completing a manuscript based on this work. running out of time here. At some point, we were connected with Oak Ridge National Lab and with EC Industries. That's a company in Wisconsin. They were interested in promoting the use of a new type of aluminum alloys containing cerium. The reason is that cerium is a side product of the exploitation of the mining, I would say, of rare earth. And cerium has no application whatsoever in high volumes. So the material is just waste. And someone came up with the idea of making these aluminum cerium based alloys at some point. And the idea caught up because the alloys, once you cast the alloys, they don't require heat treatment to have a high hardness and high ductility. So that's the appealing factor. The problem is that when you start adding another alloying elements like magnesium, like silicon, when you think, okay, if we add magnesium and silicon, we are going to get even better properties. No, that's not happening. Not at all levels. And the problem is nonlinear. So one of my grad students, he's a PhD student now at the University of Florida, started working on this. We're in the process of completing that work. So we haven't published anything. I shouldn't be showing you this. Yeah, so let's go to the next. Another grad student started working on another approach to produce aluminum cerium alloys. Rather than having aluminum cerium alloys, she thought, okay, why don't we consume more cerium just by putting aluminum cerium and just press them together and make a composite out of that. So that's what he did, and the procedure is quite similar to what is being used to produce superconductors, right? Just encase that in a stainless steel sheath, and then press that together. So she was working on that with us, and then she went to work with that in Oak Ridge National Lab, and now she's a doctoral student at University of Tennessee Knoxville. She completed that work over there, and we just published this just 2 weeks ago, I believe. I'm not going to talk about these porous materials. That's another way of producing. We intended to produce nanoporous by selective dissolution of some binary alloys. Let me go to what I really like. I told you that I would dedicate some time to one of our last projects. This started maybe 2-3 years ago. And let me give you a little context. This is the last image right here. That's the last image that the radar, the weather radar that we have one, at that time we had only one, working in Puerto Rico, captured of Hurricane Maria. Right after that, the radar was destroyed. The radar was located more or less like in this place, in a region called Cayey. Hurricane Maria just went over us from this point to that point, kind of a diagonal line through Puerto Rico. So the whole island felt the effect of the hurricane. It was Category 4 hurricane. Destruction was massive. It is believed that 3,000 people lost their lives, either as a direct consequence of the hurricane or as indirect consequence. The vegetation, as you can see in this movie, was destroyed. It is believed that 28% maybe of all the trees were gone and never return, gone. Some of the most affected trees were not the native trees of Puerto Rico. I learned that through an ecology professor in our agricultural science school, because he was the one that that talked me into this project. And the most affected trees were those that were non-native to Puerto Rico. For instance, you think that bamboo is a strong tree, right? No, bamboo was split in half by the forces of the storm. One of those imported trees is this one. This one is the one that we were interested in. This is called African tulip tree. And it is very easy to identify them because they have these beautiful flowers. They're trumpet shape and red flowers. The African tulip tree was introduced in Puerto Rico as an ornamental tree because it's a really beautiful tree. The problem with the tree, it comes from Africa. The problem with the tree is that the wood is too porous. So it shouldn't surprise anyone that these trees went down very easily. You can imagine the disaster, right? For instance, in our neighborhood, we couldn't get out of the neighborhood because of the fallen trees on the roads. So this professor asked me, okay, we have all these material being just rotten on the landfills. Anything we can do with that? So with another professor in chemical engineering, we thought, okay, that could be a source of some biopolymers. So that's what we are doing now. We are studying the chemical composition in terms of biopolymers of this wood. Essentially looking for cellulose, looking for polyose, that's hemicellulose, and lignin, particularly lignin. So one of our students using this Soxhlet extraction technique is extracting or optimizing the extraction of those biopolymeric materials. In the second stage of this project, we did not start that yet, is to densify the wood and make it a higher strength material, so that we can fabricate different things, from blocks or even tables and chairs or something like that. But that's the second part, and for that we need to have some assessment of mechanical properties, and so that's the next stage. So, and then we have some ongoing projects. We just got a postdoc who's working on these new types of substrates for surface enhanced Raman scattering, and another group is working on detection of water contaminants using materials. This is supported by NASA, and so forth. It's these are we just started these projects this semester, so very few details I can tell you about them. The group right now is made up by one postdoc, 4 doctoral students, 8 masters, mostly from our material science program, but some from physics, from civil engineering. And very few undergraduates. This is unfortunate. In the past, I used to have between 20 and 30 undergrads working in the lab, but we couldn't, mostly because of the pandemic, we couldn't get more undergrads in the group. Graduate programs of those students, the grad students, material science and engineering, civil, bioengineering, and undergrads, chemical engineering, mechanical engineering. We have five labs, including a class 100 clean room. Major instrumentation involved, I already mentioned the nano indenter, the class 100 clean room. We have a Renishaw AM400 that we have not installed yet. We are trying to convince our administrators to put down money for that. And good luck with that. And funding sources, mostly NSF, but also DOD and the Department of Education too. And of course, our material advantage student chapter, a very, very successful chapter. We got 4 times since 2009, I believe, 4 times a Chapter of Excellence Award from the international organization. And okay, this is the team nowadays, the postdoc, the grad students, some pretending to be working, some of them, well, say on the beach. Some are really new, like him. Some are, well, about to graduate. And until recently, we were working with high schoolers. We had high schoolers in the group, not these days. And sometimes about 2 years ago, we took our show to Vieques Island. If you come to Puerto Rico, you have to visit these 2 small islands on the east coast of Puerto Rico. One is Vieques, the other one is Culebra, and they have these gorgeous beaches. You have to come to visit them. And they're mostly, the inhabitants are mostly low-income families, and that's really bad. And then, of course, some of the undergrads, as I said, they are very few these days. And this was in the last TMS meeting, TMS 2020, where we got these 2 first prizes awards in the post competition. And of course, our mascot, let me introduce you to Nanito. Nanito is our mascot, and he is what we use to go to the local schools to promote engineering and science among those students. Very interested in working with low-income families. So I think that's the end of it. I'm sorry it took more time than it should. I was supposed to. Eric told me that only 30 minutes. I went to 40.
Oh, I didn't tell you 30 minutes.
I'm sorry.
Maybe. No. You're very good on time. So thank you, Marcelo.
Sure. Thank you. So
yes, a very wide range of things that you've been working on. And I know over the years, your students have gotten lots of prizes at conferences, just like the ones you were showing from the last TMS, I think it was.
The last in-person TMS. This was right before hell broke loose. And this was in February 2020. So
Okay.
the next month, you know what happened.
Yep. I think Rama had a question. He had his hand up. Rama Krishnan.
Oh yeah, no, Rama.
Yeah.
Hey,
hello. Hello,
how
how
you
are you?
doing?
No, very nice talk.
Thank you, Rama.
So I was just, in all your composites, we're also trying to do the same thing, but how do you study, how do you relate when you put silica in ceramics and, sorry, not in ceramics, in these materials, how do you study the dispersion of silica? I mean, like, what is the cause for the strength to go up? How do you study that in that complex system, or like, I'm just curious as to, how you characterize.
In concrete?
Concrete, sorry.
The only way you can do that is just to study the bulk material. Just
Okay.
add that, verify the variability of the results is small, and then just look at the final at the performance of the bulk material. We did some this student that I mentioned to you, this Colombian student, did tiny bit of studies in using an STM. But it just has to corroborate some things related to the effect of the pozzolanic reaction with sand. But it was just a tiny bit of that research. Most of the research was done on the bulk.
Oh wow! Okay, cool.
Which, so it's not the best thing to do, but it's really hard to study the material in situ and see in situ the effect of the nanoparticles.
So Marcelo, I was surprised when you mentioned that you were using a colloidal silica. So it comes in, I think, as a liquid, and so you had described fly ash, which is a dry material. So I was thinking that you were putting in nanoparticles, dry nanoparticles of silica.
No, the problem with that, yes, we didn't want to do that. Actually, I was discussing this with a professor in Wisconsin who's working similar approach, and the problem is that the dispersion that you get is really awful. You don't get much dispersion. So on the other hand, if you use this colloidal silica with water that you need for making the slurry, it's a non-issue, right? So you get a good dispersion of the nanoparticles. You don't have to worry about the dispersion in that case.
Okay, very good. Other questions? I had something on your materials that you were using to destroy different things like atrazine, and you were using glass. And my question is it the light that destroys the atrazine, or is it a combination of the light plus the atrazine being anchored to the glass surface so that you're having some sort of surface interaction?
Actually, when we were doing that work, I remembered you quite well, Eric, because we were sort of sintering the glass, the glass beads. The glass was crushed, and then we glue them together by just heating the shards together.
Yep.
But not to get full densification. We just wanted to have a porous system, so that we can filter water through that interconnected porosity. And so the filter had two purposes. One was to get water through it in order to capture turbidity from water, and on top of this mass of glass, we deposited the nanoparticles, the TiO2 nanoparticles. So the idea was to have that exposed to light, in just regular sunlight, and with the UVs from the sunlight, just activate the TiO2 to, well, destroy the atrazine.
Okay.
That was the idea. We had problems with that, but that was the overall idea to do that. Now I have another student who's doing similar approach, but not with the glass beads. But, he's using these biopolymers substrates to do that, and he's investigating atrazine too.
Okay. Very good. Other questions?
I saw some.
So I can't see everyone. So if you have a question, just sing out. Unmute and just go ahead and ask a question. I saw Tariq there.
There were some hands raised, and I was finishing that.
Yes,
Manuel.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Hey, Professor. So I was watching the whole presentation, and I noticed that you have a lot of, diverse research and a lot of jobs that you have contributed with other professors from other universities, other grad students, and all that. One of them that popped up was the analysis when you deposited using magnetron sputtered aluminum films.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, you had, a challenge that was that because of the substrate, you had different types of effects on the film growth. Any one that ever popped up more than, the other ones? What type of substrates did you use exactly?
Yeah, thank you, Manuel. Manuel is in one of my grad classes. Of course, we had problems when we were doing that. The first thing that we thought was that the film would not attach to glass slides. That's why we tried to use an amorphous substrate and compare that with a crystalline substrate as a silicon wafer. So we have to tweak the sputtering unit, and we could not work with DC mode. We had to go to RF mode, and of course the deposition rate was slower, and that's why we compensate for the problem of attachment. And in the end, we had a really good attachment between the film and the substrates. So that became a non-issue. But after several trials and errors, so the films have some problems too, because the films were not flat. I mean, they were curved. So we had to come up with another strategy to try to make the films as flat as possible. You should expect a curved surface because you end up having these residual stresses on the film, right? So for that, again, we have to tweak the power of the arc and so forth. In the end, we ended up with some decent surfaces that were flat enough. We were testing that using a profilometer that's in the same clean room. Yeah.
Okay. And besides, doing some type of different surface morphologies, what other things did you do besides, AFM, XRD? Did you do any other types of analysis on
Yeah,
this?
yep. The whole thing. Well, we don't have much instrumentation. We use what we could. We don't have a TEM. That would have been ideal. Actually, this was we sent a sample. I don't recall if we sent it to Wisconsin or to UCLA, and they did some TEM analysis of the films. And then they noticed that the aluminum film was not entirely crystalline. It has some amorphization. And we did do we detected some problems related to that in our diffractometer, the one in 312. That lack of crystallinity in the aluminum film. But again, well, I wish we had a TEM to do that work. I wish we had a field emission SEM to look at the grains. But as you know, we're poor. We don't have access to that. I think the main problem that we have is that the university doesn't put down money for maintaining that pieces of equipment. Yes, we bring the money to buy the equipment, but then what? We need these contracts for maintenance that we never get.
Yeah. Besides, everything that is done on the university, just like the slides show, there's a really diverse research pattern for all types of things that one would love to research. So thanks again for answering the question, Professor.
Thank you, Manuel.
Okay, we've got time for maybe one more question.
I see Anna Mari. She is the grad student working with the last project that we have in concrete. She's the one modeling optimizing the mixtures. So if you have any question about that, she's the expert. I'm just a messenger.
Okay. So there are a wide variety of colloidal silica.
Yes.
I think you probably get it from Nalco. So have you investigated the different sizes, concentrations, stabilizers?
Yeah, we got them from Nissan Chemicals.
Nissan Chemical, okay.
Yeah. And that's a problem because they changed the methodology for producing the colloidal silica, and that complicated things for us because, well, and Amari can tell you that. Well, we have different types of colloids, so the result was a variability in the performance of concrete. See, concrete is very sensitive to that kind of changes in the components.
Okay. Well, with that, if there are no other questions, we'll give about 10 seconds for somebody to unmute and ask a question. And if we don't hear anything, we'll thank Marcelo one final time.
Sure.
10 seconds right now. Marcelo, thank you very much.
Sure.
Appreciate your seminar, and it's exciting to see all the different things that you're working on.
Yeah,
You
it's
you guys
exciting,
seem
but
to
it's
have,
tiring,
yeah, you have a lot of collaborations and ideas that have turned into collaborations across the campus. And I think probably knowing the programs that you're directing, that you've had an open office and have invited people in to talk about things, and they've turned into collaborative projects.
Yeah, it's interesting, huh? You that I keep telling that to the young faculty. You get a PhD, but it just to open you the doors. Just you have to think out of the box. You have to open up and exploring different things.
Yeah, yeah.
And I learned that the hard way, but I learned it.
Yes, but you have helped the folks at UPRM by all of the different programs that you've participated in, the big centers and programs that are not just individual research, but are group type research. So I think you're really to be commended on that. And with that, I am going to stop the recording. And I think we'll stop the meeting.
All right.